Today's webinar is on the topic Enterprise Appstore, Architecture, Design and Key Considerations. Today we have with us Mr. Rauf, Director Technology, Mobility Practice at Virtusa Corporation. Rauf leads the mobility practice at Virtusa. In this role, he provides guidance, leadership and foresight on the market, technology, tools, strategy and aligning Virtusa's mobility offerings to market demands and client requirements. He has led and owned large mobility program with Fortune 1000 companies. Gentlemen, this presentation will continue for next 45 minutes and you can ask your questions by typing in the chat pane available in webinar control panel. So without further delay, I invite Rauf to take control of the webinar.
Share this screen with you.
Mr. Rauf, yes, we can see your PPT now. Please get started with the webinar. Thank you.
Okay. I am actually sharing my screen right now, so you should see it in a few seconds. Okay. Is the screen visible right now?
Please get in the full screen mode. Thank you.
Can you see the screen now actually?
Yes, the screen is visible. Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, good. All right, everybody. So the topic for today's discussion is obviously the Enterprise Appstore, the architecture, design, and key considerations. So we'll get started with this. Question arises as, why do you need an app store? Why does an enterprise who basically is building mobile applications and mobile solutions for the workforce need to create and maintain an application store? So obviously there are four major reasons for it. The first reason is the distribution, right? Enterprises need a way to centralize the distribution of applications and solutions to workforce inside the enterprise, right? So that's the primary reason is distribution. Then, apart from distribution, they need to ensure security, confidentiality, and privacy of business information. And since the applications they are basically distributing are in-house applications for most part, or they could be beta applications or Rauf applications which are not yet in the public app store or the marketplace. That should not be available over the internet or in the public app store, right? They need control, basically. They need to make sure that their corporate policies are followed in the applications as they are followed in their internal applications on their desktop or on the web. They need to decide who is authorized to publish the applications. If the person who's submitting the applications is actually authorized, has a proper certificates and so on. They need to make sure that the devices that are trying to access the applications have the authority to download that applications. They need to be able to map some of the applications to their entitlements and authorizations within the organization. And basically, they also need to, when they are developing mobile applications or mobile web or mobility-related solutions, they need some collaboration between their teams. And to do that, they may need to put up applications which are still in development mode or which are in mode. And the other teams need to collaborate with them, offer their input and guidance and so on. So these are the main reasons why an enterprise actually needs the application store. So let's move on. So we have seen that, primarily when people talk about the App Store, they talk about distribution of mobile applications. But as we are seeing with the Google Play and with the iTunes, application stores are evolving to be more than just a distribution center for mobile apps. People are able to distribute books, and manuals and other content. They are able to distribute audio and video. They are able to distribute mobile web. The question really is, what is mobile web applications? How are they distributed through the App Store? Because they are available on the web or they are available online in the network, private network, or the LAN inside the organization, right? So if you look at Chrome App Store, like Google's Chrome App Store, it's nothing but an app store which basically, consolidates and gives you access to several web apps. But when you download from Chrome, basically it launches these applications when the browser is launched. So you get a lot more things like speed of access and so on and so forth. So this is a new area where people are beginning to put their web applications onto the App Store. So they're all in a centralized place and people can easily discover them without having to type in or bookmark the URL. And this trend is going to continue actually. So this is the reason basically. Many different devices, tablets, iOS, Android, Windows Phone 7, BlackBerry, they all need access to many of these things. And the App Store provides a very centralized distribution and control. Now, let's look at the architecture for the App Store. What kind of an architecture will obviously work, and what it should ideally look like, and what are some of the key components, architectural components and services that you need to have in the App Store. Basically, when you design the architecture of the App Store, you need to take into consideration all of these things mentioned. It should be easy to access. It should be fast and efficient. People should be able to discover the applications. If you have a large number of applications in the enterprise, people should be able to sort them and see them, based on category. They should be able to quickly search them. So obviously, these are some of the functional constraints that you need to design with. They need to be able to access the application online through the corporate firewall and over the internet. So the first thing is, a secure connection that should be able to go through the proper firewall, like an SSL connection, right? And it needs to take care of encryption and security, both at the device level and at the server level, so all authorized users can log in. Authentication, user roles and authorization should be able to be, the user role and authorization should be something which could be mapped to the corporate network and could be mapped to internal identity management systems and to the directory service, so that only the authorized users can see some of the applications. For example, with the financial applications, people, and it's entitled for someone who is working at vice president in finance or above level, then obviously someone who is working in the engineering department, for example, should not be able to see the application. And that's the role of the user authorization component. So the Enterprise Appstore box you see, that's the basically that is the Enterprise Appstore. So it will have this should be accessed over multiple things. For example, mobile web as well as native applications or hybrid applications on multiple devices, Android, iPhone, iPad, and other handsets. Basically, you could view this over a native application or through mobile web. So it's good to have an App Store gateway, which will be the unified web services, right? So all of the devices go through this single unified layer, and they come into the App Store Manager, which is the central controller for the App Store on the server side. Then you can have components for notifications and alerts. You can have components for over-the-air updates, push update, for example. You can have an active sync component, which will be able to determine what is available on the server and what is available on different devices and keep track of the sync. Then basically, you have a set of native applications on iOS, Android, Windows 7, BlackBerry, and others. And basically, you can have content like images, videos, and audio, and documents, etc. that you want to serve over the App Store. Then there should be a process for application submission and approval. So someone should be able to submit an application, and it should be, there would be approvers in the system who will get notified, and then when this is submitted, and there could be a workflow for approval there, basically. And these applications are obviously stored in some kind of a repository. It could be a database, a persistent repository with different versions available there, or it could be some kind of basically source system which can distribute binaries. Then you can have application usage rules which determine who's able to use what parts or see what parts of the application. For example, there could be an application which has different views. So a person working as, for example, an architect would see a different view of the application, whereas a person working as a project manager might be able to see a different view, right? So these are the rules which you can implement through a rule system. Then there should be a web services client which will allow the App Store to interact with other corporate services through a web services gateway. And if you look at the corporate network and apps, that's on the back-end side of the Enterprise App Store. So there could be a web services gateway which will basically you can go to a web services interface to go to different message brokers and talk to different systems like the identity management systems, directory systems, human resources, enterprise applications, or CRM. So if a mobile application requires access to these services to determine something, you can always connect to your backend to get all of this information. And again, if you look at the overall front end, you should be able to access these within the corporate network. This application store you should be able to access it inside the corporate network, or you should be able to access it outside the internet through a corporate firewall. So if you have any questions, I can take a few questions now, or you can save them later. We'll have a Q&A session at the end also. All right, so I don't see any questions right now. So what are the latest challenges in mobile computing? That's the question basically. So again, I'm not sure mobile computing challenges are related to the App Store, but I'm going to answer it in the context of building the application store. So obviously, some of the challenges in building and running the App Store are basically to support multiple mobile operating systems, multiple devices, and to be able to you should have the functionality so that an app which is intended for iPad should not be downloaded on iPhone, right? And vice versa, you should be able to detect those devices. You should be able to track what versions of the applications are there, send the push notifications to those devices when there's an update. All of these are challenges, basically, and we can solve them by addressing all of these things, as I've shown in the architecture diagram. You build components which, check for these and proactively send notification to the user to update it or allow automatic updating through OTA. That eases the pain of distribution for the users and for the administrators. Being able to have a centralized administrative capability to review the applications that are submitted and to approve that, that's also a current challenge that many people face in trying to build the Enterprise Appstore. All right, so okay, let me see if there are any questions there. So Sunil had asked a previous question. So the other one is the content should come from the corporate network as well. And then this was asked by Rauf. Then I see another question from Chris, which is how mobile applications will be helpful. And Rauf says, take example of GTalk. Do we need to have different types of architecture for product or desktop and mobile? How about the contents coming from the corporate network on the App Store, the apps accessing the apps accessing the content from public? Now, could you see accessing the content from the public network? Could you see the challenges? All right, so basically I'm going to skip the questions which are generally related to mobility, mobile applications in general, and I'm going to basically answer the questions which are relevant to the Enterprise Application Store. So the question about content coming from the corporate network on the App Store, the apps accessing the content in public. Could you see challenges there? Yes, obviously. If you're coming from a public network, if you're coming through the internet, you need to have some kind of a security mechanism. Either you make the App Store accessible over a secure SSL-related URL, which can authenticate the coming user through your authentication system and or through your directory services. Or you can enforce that the user should come in through a corporate firewall, VPN, and basically the enterprise devices which are enterprise enabled, they should have the VPN client, and that can authorize them to come through the network. And it's a little bit of a challenge to initially install and configure the VPN, and this is where the corporate IT should be able to help in using their existing mobile device management solutions, or have clear instructions for the users to install and set up their VPN client, basically. So VPN makes it a little bit harder to basically configure all the devices on the network, but that adds additional security. Okay. Then how about content coming from the corporate network on the App Store, the apps accessing the content from the public? Okay. The question from Rauf is about different types of architecture from product on desktop and mobile. Obviously, mobile solutions will be different than desktop applications. And there's a question about how mobile application will be helpful, and if it is about mobile application, native application for Enterprise Appstore. Obviously, having a native app on the devices or Android or iOS to access your App Store makes it a little bit more simpler. So you can see all of the updates that are pending, that need to be manually installed. You can see all the notifications in one place, basically, and you can search and sort through those. It gives a much better user interface and user experience than just using a mobile website, basically, or mobile app. So I think we need to move on in the interest of time. We still have some time at the end of this presentation to address some additional questions. Okay, so now the question arises, what are some of the key architectural, design, and functional considerations for the Enterprise Appstore? So I'm going to address the key, the top 10 key considerations that you need to look at when you're building the Enterprise Appstore. So obviously, the first architectural design and functional considerations is about supporting multiple mobile platforms. And in talking to several of our large customers, customers such as large corporations in the U.S. and Europe, most of them have, basically noted the challenges are around supporting multiple mobile platforms. They need to support iOS applications, Android applications, in some cases BlackBerry applications. They need to support Windows Phone 7 as well, as it begins to gain some traction in the market. Then basically some corporations will have other mobile OS depending upon what they're using. For example, Symbian may still be used in some of the organizations. And multiple versions of the same mobile operating system. For example, Android has multiple versions like Gingerbread and Ice Cream Sandwich and Honeycomb. So which of these do you support, and how do you keep the process of the apps updated for each version, and how do you test for those? Obviously, those are some of the challenges that you see here. And obviously, BlackBerry has the RIM OS, different versions of the RIM OS, including QNX, and if you're supporting BlackBerry, you need to make sure that you support those multiple versions of the apps also. So this is the number one design consideration. So you want to design an app store which will help you address all of these issues. You have built this into the architecture. Device recognition should be automatic on your app store. So the app store should be able to recognize where a user is coming from and serve only the appropriate content. So an iOS user, for example, should only be able to see iOS applications, and you should not have to worry about seeing any Android or Windows Phone 7. So there should be auto filter built in on the Enterprise App Store on the server. Going forward, basically, the number two consideration is mobile browser and native app for access. As I have mentioned briefly, there are two ways to access the App Store inside the Enterprise or the Enterprise App Store from public networks such as the Internet. It's either a native application or it could be a mobile web, right? So you can make the applications available to a mobile website, and people go onto the mobile website, they browse, they search, and they download. Or they download a native application, or IT can provision an app, before issuing a device, or if it's a BYOD, they can basically bring in the device, they can configure it over the network, and people can log in and see the information. Now, going forward, basically, there's another way, there's a third way, basically, right? First you build the mobile web and make sure its user experience is good and accessible and all of that. You can then wrap the mobile web into a native application wrapper and build a hybrid application. So the hybrid application essentially accesses the App Store to the embedded browser inside the native application, but it uses the same interfaces and user experience as the native app. And a lot of people are going that direction by building an HTML5 version of the App Store on the mobile web and wrapping it up in a hybrid application. Responsive web design is something which you can consider basically because people will navigate your App Store from a desktop or a laptop. And then they would also look at the App Store from an iPad or another tablet or mobile devices. So if you're building mobile web, that's one of the considerations is do you want to build a mobile-only website or do you want to build a responsive web design which can address both mobile devices and desktop actually. So that's a key consideration you should consider. Then moving forward, security. Right, so one of the key questions is basically allow only authorized persons to see the corporate app store. If a user has a URL, they should not be able to get onto the app store from an unauthorized device. So the app store should be able to recognize the device. It should be able to recognize the user, to his or her correct credentials and identifying them and confirming them with the backend single sign-on system or identity management system or a directory service. And it should always use a secure communication channel like SSL or VPN for all interaction over the network outside the corporate firewall. And it should only allow app downloads over a secure connection once you're outside the corporate network. You can, if a device is reported stolen or lost, there should be a capability to remote data wipe it, right, uninstall the applications automatically and deal with the device. And this can be done if a corporation or an enterprise has invested in the mobile device management, MDM kind of a solution. You can achieve it using the MDM, right? Or you can write some kind of a capability where you can basically deauthorize device from accessing the App Store or getting any updates to the applications or being able to connect. So these are some of the security-related constraints that the App Store should implement. Again, when I'm talking about security, I'm very specific. This security is about the App Store and not about mobile apps in general, basically, right? There's a big topic about security on mobile apps. We're not trying to address that here. So access control is the other side of security, right? So you should have enterprise access control. What it basically means is you should be able to use entitlements, which is basically mapping the users to corporate authorization and entitlement. For example, the apps which are meant to be looked at by Chief Financial Officer, CFO, or VP of Finance, or someone at that level. It should not be accessible to someone who is not at that level or not within the department, right? And the app should be filtered by the user's authorization. So if a person who is working in the company as a financial controller, for example, should be able to only see the application he or she is authorized to download, view, and install. They should not see 100 applications or 200 applications, and when they go and click on it, they get some kind of a message that the application cannot be installed, or if it's installed, it won't work. So that's not a good thing to do. So it's best to filter it out. The best practice is to basically filter it out based on user authorization. And as we have seen in the architecture, you can address this by building an integration from the App Store to the corporate directory and to identity management servers, and you can build some of the components inside the App Store to verify that information. And obviously, when you are submitting the applications, you want to make sure only authorized employees can look into those applications, basically, right? They should be only the authorized employees within the organization should be able to load the applications onto the App Store and await the approval, basically. So that's obviously a very basic access control requirement. Going forward, over-the-air updates, basically. Obviously, this is a key design consideration, key architectural consideration, and very key functional considerations as well. With iOS 5 and above supporting over-the-air updates, and Android has been supporting OTA for a long time, and BlackBerry and Windows Phone 7 also getting along the line. You should make the application downloadable over the air on mobile devices and platforms, so a user does not have to connect or feed their device to a desktop or a laptop or a MacBook to be able to download or update their application. They should be able to download the applications over the air. They should be able to update the applications over the air. And if an application is withdrawn from the application store, then they should get a notification, and should be the application should be able to, the administrator should be able to retire the application essentially from the devices using the OTA communication mechanism. People should get notification and auto updates for patches and maintenance releases, right? And they should be auto sync. Auto sync is a two-way mechanism, right, where device pulls the App Store to see their updates, and if there are updates on the App Store or vice versa, it notifies the device, and device is basically registered and listening for those messages. And it gives the update, and the user sees that notification. And this is very similar to how it works today in the Android world or iOS world. When you have updates to the application that you downloaded from the iOS App Store, Apple App Store, or Android Marketplace, you do see notifications, and the Enterprise Appstore should work in a similar way. So we are not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but we are basically trying to get the same functionality that is available in the public app stores onto the enterprise, and it makes life simple for both the administrators, the publishers of the applications, and the consumers. So push notifications, number 6, is again a key consideration. You should be able to send notifications utilizing the push capability on devices. So most of the mobile operating systems right now support the push capability, and when a user submits the application and it is approved, you can send a notification to all of the registered users and devices which have the capability and which are authorized to download those applications. And notifications come very handy when you have updates to the app. And for most part, people should have the latest versions of the app, right? And that's how it should be managed. So when there is the latest version of the app, then the App Store should be maintaining an inventory of devices and users who have installed that application, and a notification should be sent proactively from the server to the client's devices. And there's a new version of the applications you need to download and install that, basically. And also, in combination with push notifications, if you're using a mobile device management system, either a homegrown system or something that is commercial or open source, you can build a capability where you can retire older versions of the applications. So if some device has an older version, you can send a notification that please download the application, or within a few days or a few weeks, the current version of the application will no longer work. Right, so you can enforce people to have the latest versions of the applications in conjunction with push notifications. So I think I touched briefly upon the topic of device registration and management. So the basic thing is, not only should the users who access the apps be authorized and authenticated, but the App Store should maintain an inventory of the devices that are authorized. For example, if device is issued by the corporations to the employees, it's an enterprise-owned device, then it's simple. Before the device is issued, it should be updated in the centralized database repository. And when issued out, if there is a BYOD, bring your own device policy, then the device should be registered first and authorized by the system. And the App Store should have maintained an inventory of the device. And then tie the device to a user, right? Sometimes, most of the cases, you have one-to-one correspondence between the user and the device. So one user gets one device, it's a simple policy. But in certain cases, like for example, when people are building collaborative applications or working on some projects that require collaboration, the device may be used by more than one user. So, and there are cases when a user can have multiple devices, which is more common right now because they may have a BlackBerry which is issued by the corporation or by the enterprise, and they can have their own iPhone or an Android device which will bring in, but they also want to access applications on those. So for all of these, you need some kind of a mapping between a device and a user, and that mapping allows, and the administrators on the App Store should be able to see the mapping and be able to control how the apps are mapped to a device and they are mapped to a user. And again, here, a mobile device management solution is in place or being used by the enterprise. This can come handy. So there should be an integration between the App Store and the MDM solution, so you can see and utilize that mapping without having to build that functionality into the App Store. Otherwise, you'll have to build some kind of a capability, rudimentary capability for registration of the device and management of the devices, basically. So we can keep track of what devices are being used by what users and appropriately issue the notifications, and also the access control part would allow certain devices from certain users and map it to the entitlements, corporate entitlements for users. Basically, can download and update apps that they are authorized to use each other. So this is about the device registration and management. So administration and control, right? This is the number 8 on our list of top 10 key architectural and design considerations. So what do we mean by administration and control? Basically means that there should be a web-based administrative control where people, where the administrators of the App Store can go in and log in and see all of the dashboard for different things. For example, they should be able to see the apps submitted for submission, new apps that have come in for approval, right? They should be routed through the workflow system to the appropriate people who are authorized to test these applications and who are the authorized approvers. Basically, if the authorized approvers approve the applications or the updates and patches, then the administrator should be able to basically put these applications onto the App Store and maybe take out the older applications, right? So basically, it's like releasing a new binary onto the App Store. So that capability is key part of the App Store, and only authorized administrators and should have the control to be able to do that, and not every user. So the administrator should be able to see an administrative view of the application store, and they will have some privileges which a normal user does not. And there should be a way to make a user as the administrator, right? So if someone needs to be the administrator for some period of time, then there should be a way for current administrators to grant the privilege. Then obviously, ability to review, approve, reject any updates and applications, that's a key thing. Withdraw and retire apps from registry, again, this is a key thing. So if for whatever reasons the application submission and approval process, some person who is actually the owner of the app feels that the application needs to be retired, or for some reason the administrator or the authorized approvers feel that an application no longer makes sense or is relevant or is not being maintained or updated, then they can retire the application. So basically they can send out notifications to the user that this application is no longer valid, and they can uninstall it, and they can basically take down the application from the App Store. Typically, most of the times, people retire the older versions of the applications, and they basically update with a new binary for the new version. Right? But in some cases, there should be a way to completely take off an application if required, basically withdraw the application from the App Store. So these are some of the key considerations from the administrative perspective. Malicious apps and code. Again, I think this is an area where the App Store plays an important role, but it's kind of like a little bit more in control because the App Store is internal to the organization. It's within the enterprise. So the chances of a remote user, an unknown user submitting some kind of a malicious app is a little bit less, but the larger the organization and the enterprise, you should have the capability to have basic checks and balances in place so that the review process can identify any app that may intentionally or unintentionally have malicious code and features that could be unintended, right? For example, the malicious code may be unintentional. Someone may be using an open source framework or maybe using utilities which are downloaded from the internet, and they're packaging it as part of the application, but that could be potentially untested, or it may be serving a different purpose for someone who's providing that malicious code. So there should be a way for approvers to identify this code, and if it is found, they should be able to take immediate action and prevent this app. If the app is already, first of all, it should be checked in the submission process. If it is not identified in the submission process, but it is found out later after the application is approved and in use, that there is some malicious code or some piece of the application could be harmful or collecting data in a different way, then there should be a way for the administrators to take immediate action. For example, they can go and disable the application completely from the App Store and disable all authorizations for that application. This is the key thing. So usually the third-party libraries that people use are the biggest source of malicious code inside the enterprise, and also that could cause potential data theft and inject some malicious behavior. So data theft is a big issue, so you should be very careful when you're building the applications, first of all, and the enterprise application review board or committee will talk about the process in a bit. So that its job is also basically to identify these things essentially and do it over a period of time. And maybe the App Store should have a way where users who discover these issues such as malicious code can also report it, right? Maybe like a contact link on the App Store, so that this kind of information can quickly be conveyed to the administrators. Will also be a good key feature that you can build as part of malicious apps and code control. All right, so we are getting to the last of the top 10 key architectural and design considerations, the publishing process. So what is a publishing process, right? So the publishing process is a process where someone who is building the enterprise application can submit the application to the review board or committee or whatever it is, or maybe just a single administrator in some cases, some simple cases, who can review the applications. They can test the application, make sure the application meets all of the enterprise requirements from security perspective, from data sharing perspective, from following the corporate branding and UI guidelines and usage and everything that has been published. So someone should be able to go over the checklist of things that are required, and they should be able to approve or deny the applications. When you deny, you should have reasons why it's being denied and what the person who's submitting their application needs to do in order for this application to be approved. What are the missing steps? Right? Someone should be able to identify the user is a valid non-user in the system. They have the valid credential. They should have valid certificates, right? For example, to submit this application. So this review board should have all of this. And you should publish the and educate the users through a Wi-Fi or some sort of portal about what is the application approval process, how the app should be submitted, and what is the criteria for approval, what are the user interface, user experience guidelines, what are the corporate policies. So these should be very visible and accessible to the users who are actually building the app so that they can take care of these considerations while they are doing the design itself, and they will not have to go back into iterations in the loops again to fix it. So communication basically is a key thing here. Policies of approval of apps. What constitutes a good policy for app approval, right? Basically, what are some of the guidelines? What are some of the must-have things? What are some of the nice-to-have things? Those should be clearly communicated and laid out, and they should be visible to the users. So that should be all about how you communicate, how easy the information is accessible to the user. So UX standards, UI standards, look and feel. This could be something. Some of it could be a mandate that the user have to follow. Some of them could be considerations in design and UI that they are not mandated, but they should. It's a good practice to follow. So the users could follow those as well if required, right? So you should always distinguish between something that is mandatory and a requirement and something that is nice to have, basically. And again, this information should be available in the corporate portal or over the network on the corporate LAN, so that the users can, again, they basically know ahead of time, the publishers of the applications will know ahead of time, basically, what are the required guidelines that they should follow and implement before they submit the application for approval. So, and one thing I need to mention here, and since we have come to the last point, is these key considerations, number 1 through number 10 that we talked about, they are not in any order, basically. So it's not that publishing process is less important than authentication or security or any of the other 9 key considerations. This is just a list, unsorted, and it's not based on importance. So out of these 10 guidelines, for example, in a particular enterprise, you might see that, number 9 could be given more priority over something which is number 8, which is administration and control. So it's just a list of the top 10 considerations, but it's not in any order. It will depend from an organization to organization on how they can sort this list and what is the priority over these features and functionality of the App Store. Okay, so I'll summarize this in a minute. The top 10 architecture, design, and functional considerations. So one is the multiple mobile platform support. Second one is having access to the App Store using either a native application or the mobile web. Third one is security, allowing only authorized persons and integration with SSO and identity management systems. Fourth is access control, and here you can use your entitlements, corporate entitlements and authorizations, and map the users to some of the directory services. Fifth is over-the-air updates to make the apps easier to access and update over the network. And push notifications, which allow the publishers as well as the administrator to communicate with the installed device base and users for updates and other key information. Number 7 is your device registration and management. So you should be able to, you should have a database and you should have a repository of devices mapped to users. 8th one is the administration and control of the Enterprise Appstore. 9th one is obviously malicious apps and codes being identified and action being taken on them, and how you can achieve that using the App Store and how you build this feature into the App Store. Number 10 is obviously the publishing process, how you document the process, how you maintain it, and how you basically communicate the process to the people inside the organization who are building and maintaining the applications. So these are the top 10 considerations, and I will just give you I'll take a few seconds to introduce Virtusa, where I work. So Virtusa is a global solutions and services company headquartered out of Westboro, Massachusetts in the United States. And we are located in US, Europe, Asia, and Middle East. The technology centers of Virtusa are in US, UK, India, and Sri Lanka. And more than 5,500 professionals work for Virtusa. It's a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. And it's a very fast-growing company with 210 million of revenue for fiscal year 2011. We are into fiscal 2013 right now, and we had an income of 17.8 million. And there are numerous awards and certificates Virtusa has done over the years, and most of the information is available on our website, virtusa.com. So that's about the company. And now, finally, folks, we have time for some more question and answers. I know you've been patient for the top 10 considerations. So if you have questions, I will just remind you one thing. I'm going to entertain questions which are very relevant to the Enterprise App Store. And we do not have time, unfortunately, to address the questions which are outside of it. So I would ask you to submit questions which are specific to Enterprise App Store, and I'll take a few minutes to answer this. Okay, so the question is, what type of web services does the App Store support? By this was asked by Ram, Balaji Ram, yes. So now you can it will be easier if you just support RESTful web services, or over HTTP or HTTPS. HTTP can be used inside the corporate network, HTTPS outside of it. So basically, if you support RESTful web services, that should be enough. But if you have particular security requirements which mandate you to use SOAP-based web services, that's not a very good design from a performance perspective, but from a security perspective, if you need to have that, you can do that. Again, you can also support both protocols. You can support sub-REST and so, but that will make the design much more complicated. Then I have a question. There are 4 major OSs: Apple, Android, Windows, Mobile 7. I think it means Windows Phone 7. BlackBerry. Is there any tool available for developers where they can manage their code for all of the platforms? So, well, developers essentially, can use any of your existing source control system to manage the code. The App Store does not manage the code, right? The App Store only manages the binaries of the published applications, right? Or the applications which are for collaboration and review, for example. So there's nothing which is available to the developers themselves to manage the different binaries for different operating systems on their primary desktops or MacBook. But the perspective of the Enterprise App Store, you should be able to identify what platform a particular app is intended for, and you should filtering capability, as I mentioned, so only the relevant app should be visible to the user of, for example, an Android mobile device and iOS mobile device. They should only see the apps that are authorized for them. Then I have a question from Harji. Cannot see the name here completely, but I guess from hang on, let me read the name here. How can we distinguish that an iPhone application is distributed to employees of a company or a non-employee, say client brand, etc.? How can we distinguish an iPhone application? Okay, and this is asked by Harjeet Sachdeva. So answering Harjeet's question here, for example, if you distribute an iPhone application, right? One of the first things I mentioned is the App Store should be maintaining a database of devices, and it should also be maintaining, a mapping of the users to the devices. Not only that, but going one step further, App Store should also have the functionality and feature to use the authorizations that you can maintain. You can maintain a list of rules with a rules engine, which will basically determine what the authorization level is and what the access is. So it's first of all filtering by user. Only authorized users should be able to see the application. I mean, it's a bad idea to allow your friends or family to use a corporate application on your mobile device, unless that app is public app which could be made available, or the public app store which they can download from an Apple iTunes or Android marketplace. There is no reason why an enterprise app which is distributed only to the employees or the corporate authorized personnel such as contractors and temporary personnel. Only authorized people should be able to view and access the application, and that you can achieve by integrating with your directory services, with your net identity management systems, and with your corporate authorization services on the back end. Okay, going further, I don't see any more questions here. Hang on.
There are still a few more questions.
Julian has asked a question actually. Yeah, I see them run. So couldn't see the scroll list. So question from Julian, is it possible to handle all sorts of security methods from handhelds? Well, I think Julian's question is, can you sort all of the security methods? So I'm not sure there should be a need to sort the security methods, but you can implement the security methods from a device. For example, the native app you provide, it's an App Store app, right? It's like the Google Play or the Android Marketplace app on the Android, or the iTunes app on the iOS devices. If you're building your own enterprise native applications, or you're building a hybrid application and a mobile app, you can basically build all of the key features into that app or onto the mobile web. For example, you can build authorizations, you can build authentication, you can build entitlements, you can build capability to identify the devices, and identify the users, identify the certificates, validate the certificates on the devices, make sure the devices are authorized, right? So all of these features you can build in. Some of the features you build in onto the device, onto the native app. Some of these you build on the server side when you're building a mobile web. But it's possible to build all of this, and these are key requirements. I mean, there's no if or when, right? It's more a question of how you do it, and you need to do all of this. Okay, going further on the questions, then the question is from Prabhakar Polanido. How the applications communicated if comes from the different apps. How the application communicated. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question here, but if the question is about communicating between the different apps, it does not matter what app is submitted to the App Store, and the notification capability should be able to tie into the existing operating system like Windows 7 or iOS or Android, and to take care of, for example, push notifications. And apps can communicate with the App Store using RESTful web services, right? Using some kind of a JSON data format, or you can import SOAP if you want within the enterprise. There's some security requirements, but it's a good idea that you standardize on a protocol such as RESTful web services, secure RESTful web services, for example, in JSON data format. So you can use that to communicate between the App Store and the actual applications and the devices. And you can use notifications to communicate from the App Store back to the device. Okay, moving on to some different questions here. Sunil Kamwar has asked the question: which activity should be planned while making strategy for creating apps across multiple? Which activity should be planned while making strategy for creating apps across multiple platforms? So again, this is a very generic question. Not sure it's relevant to the App Store here, but I think you should make key design considerations that are applicable across all devices while doing that, and you can basically make sure that the guidelines that are published by the App Store for approval are all followed regarding user interface, user experience, branding, look and feel, security, malicious. All of the benefits that I talked about, those should be addressed by the App Store and by the application designers before the app is submitted. And the process should be very clearly communicated to the users who are building these applications and maintaining them. Okay. So I think we are running over the time right now, so I'm going to take the next couple of questions only, and then we can finish that. What is the success rate of Enterprise App Store deployments? What is the predicted size of the market for the same? Who are the key players in terms of solution providers? So I think I'm not sure I have statistics or data to tell you what is the success rate of App Store deployments as of yet, but I've seen from some of our very large corporate 1,000 clients, most of them are already have built and are running an App Store, or they're planning to do it. Basically, market for the same, again, I don't have the statistics right now to tell you what they are, but I think there are some numbers which are published by research agencies, and maybe you should look into them for those statistics and who are the key players in terms of solution providers. So I think primarily most of the mobile device management solution companies and enterprise mobility vendors are getting into this space And in some cases, the EM/EAP vendors are also getting into the space, and they will be the ones who should be providing, some kind of products being sold in the market, which will be like a corporate enterprise app store product, right, that you can buy in the market. And I think we should see something coming from Sybase or SAP. Not sure what their roadmap is, but we should see something from them or some other enterprise applications vendors, basically enterprise mobile application vendors. They should be coming out with some products soon. That's the talk in the market right now. I'll take the last question here, which has been asked by Lona Koman. I think he has left the conference. What kind of business process re-engineering is needed when a company opts for an app store? For instance, ERP implementation requires a high degree of BPR or system customization. What should be the implications of mobile apps on the business itself? So again, re-engineering a mobile application to access ERP functionality is not the relevant question here, but I think what the most enterprises are trying to do with the apps is they are trying to put the information right, in the hands of the enterprise employees, so that they can take faster decisions. They have easier access to data. They no longer need to be in front of their desktop or laptop to be able to get access to information and make key decisions that will drive the business. So basically, this is all about speed of decision making and efficiency. So I think I think we have reached the time for the webinar, and I would like to conclude that by thanking all of the attendees who have taken the time to attend this. And there has been a few technical glitches on my side. Primarily, and I'm sorry about that, but hope that this session was useful. And basically, the topic you found was relevant to your organization, and maybe you can take away the key learnings from this and apply and take them to your own organization and discuss how you can make and create a better app store either for your own enterprise or for your clients. Thank you all, and that will be it. Bye.
Thanks, Rauf, for presenting this webinar. It was really an informative webinar. I would also like to thank our participants for making this webinar a huge success. Recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. And then the next webinar on techgig.com is Value of Project Management. Speaker would be Ramam Atmakuri, Vice President in Hyderabad Center, Cognizant Technology Solutions. So see you all tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you.